everyone, it's Sevi, and the 3.6 special program announced two new artifact sets, Nymph's Dream and Vourukasha's Glow. So in this video, I'm quickly going to discuss how they work, who they'll be viable on, and how worth it is to farm, plus my overall thoughts towards the end. So let's get right into it. Starting with the Nymph's Dream, it has a 15% hydro damage bonus on the 2-piece set and a stacking mechanic, which means the bonuses will have a ramp up time. Now, when you get max stacks, it gives you a total of 30% hydro damage bonus and 25% attack. So there are a couple of things here that will need to be tested, such as whether a normal attack, charge attack, or plunging attack just count as one stack source. For example, if you do N1C, do you only get 2 stacks or do you only get 1 stack? So that will need to be tested out. Another thing is that I'm not sure yet if the stacks will apply to the hits that trigger them, and that is another thing that will have to be tested out when the set comes out. But from here, we can already make some preliminary observations about the characters that they might be good on. So let's start with a popular candidate, Childe. Now the set looks very good for Childe, and it's also kind of written like the Polar Star's passive, which is his signature weapon. So some of you might be wondering, how does it compare to the 4-piece Heart of Depths set? The main caveat about the 4-piece Heart of Depths on Childe is that its 4-piece only applies a damage bonus to the normal and charged attack, while Childe's other damage sources, like his Riptide and his Burst, make up a large portion of his damage in a full rotation as well. And this is a huge reason why actually going just 2-piece hydro damage bonus 2-piece attack percent on Childe is very competitive, because it buffs his entire kit and is generally more flexible in terms of getting good substats as well. So comparing that, the full effects of the 4-piece Nymph artifact is like a bulkier version of getting a 2-piece hydro damage 2-piece attack percent set on Childe, which definitely looks like a damage increase. Some maths have already been calced for this. Basically, if you are already counting a rotation where Childe has gained all of the stacks, has gained the maximum stacks, then it's about an 8% damage increase or so. But if you're counting a rotation where he is gaining the stacks throughout the rotation, it comes up to about 3%. You'll only really be feeling the effect of the stacks fully in the second rotation onwards. Now, considering that damage increase, it's still a small enough gap that can be narrowed by getting better quality substats on your 4-piece Heart of Depth set or a 2-piece set. Is that damage increase large enough that merits for you to sink your resin into the domain? Personally, I wouldn't recommend it. And if you are starting from scratch, if you don't have Childe artifacts yet, then you might want to consider your other possibilities as well. Another popular candidate is Ayato. Now, the increase on Ayato on putting him on Nymph's Dream is also going to be pretty small. A lot of Ayato's damage is skewed into his normal attacks. So Nymph's Dream will give his burst a bigger buff than Ayato would get on 4-piece Heart of Depths or 4-piece Gladiators, but while his burst damage isn't negligible, it's still not as big of an overall damage increase compared to what you would get with, say, Childe. So versus a 4-piece Gladiator set, the Nymph would pretty much come out slightly higher because of that extra attack percent and because of that burst getting a hydro damage bonus, but it's still going to be a small enough gap that can be closed by substats. And then versus 4-piece Heart of Depths, it's also pretty much going to come up quite close in damage and also will be a substat game. Another candidate in particular I want to bring up, this is a pretty interesting one and I wouldn't really have considered it until someone in my Discord server asked about it. This one is about Xingqiu. So the main reasons for considering someone like Xingqiu is because Xingqiu's burst doesn't snapshot. So in teams where he has the flexibility to swap on field, do an auto attack, and can refresh the stacks of the Nymph's Dream, it will give his burst some buffs. Now the question is that viable or even competitive with Emblem of Severed Fate? Now, thanks to my theory crafter friend Migo, who did some quick maths on it, they turned out actually quite close between the Nymph's Dream and Emblem of Severed Fate. Now the main caveat is that by not using 4-piece Emblem, you are losing out on the 20% ER that its 2-piece bonus gives, and you will have to compensate that by getting ER substats on the Nymph's Dream. Xingqiu naturally needs a lot of ER, so you don't want to ignore that ER requirement or that ER aspect of him. But if you actually come out with equal amount of ER on both the Nymph set and the Emblem of Severed Fate set, then yeah, they can be competitive, and it's again going to be a substat game. Moving on to Vourukasha's Glow. So the Vourukasha's Glow set description looks a little bit confusing, but looking at Flower of Paradise Lost, the descriptions are written quite similarly. So let's go over the set effects first. On the 2-piece bonus, the Vourukasha's Glow gives a 20% HP bonus, and then the 4-piece set, it gives 10% elemental skill and burst damage bonus, and then when the character takes damage, gets 8% per stack, and this can stack up to 5 times. So basically this totals up to a maximum of 50% elemental skill and burst damage bonus. Again, ramp up time. So who first comes to mind when you look at this set? Well, there is the character that does take damage off field quite naturally, which is Dehya. And even though it looks like a good Dehya damage set, there are a lot of things to consider. So first of all, if you have Dehya at C0, her HP scaling is pretty bad for damage. So yes, the extra HP will contribute to her survivability, but if you're going for damage, unless you have like her early constellation where her HP scaling improves, at least at C0, this set isn't going to give that high of a damage increase. Now, you might be thinking that, well, the elemental skill at least gets a damage bonus as compared to an Emblem of Severed Fate where it's only her burst. And while that is true, her elemental skill really doesn't have good scaling to begin with, so the overall damage increase isn't going to be a lot. Now, bringing up Emblem of Severed Fate again as a burst DPS, I find Emblem set to still be more reliable on Dehya because of the ER it gives. Remember that Dehya, before she reaches C4, her ER requirements can get very high, and the Emblem of Severed Fate helps with that, and of course, its damage bonus does scale with the amount of ER she gets. Basically, pre-C4, I wouldn't really consider farming this new set for her, mostly because of her ER requirements. Another character you can consider would be Yelan. Now, Yelan is yet another emblem character, and again, ER for her is great. And in order for Vourukasha's Glow to work on Yelan, she would have to be the one on field taking damage, since she has no way of taking damage from off field, right? But Yelan is primarily played as an off-field unit, while another teammate performs their on-field role. This does change if you're a whale and she's at C6, and then this kind of becomes a bit more viable, and in theory, on paper, the buffs do look quite good for her because she has a lot of damage in both her skill and her burst. But naturally, if you are using her at C0, using her as an off-field unit, then it's not really something that is worth considering unless you just want to, I don't know, see crazy numbers on your Yelan skill damage, I suppose. Another character I've seen a lot of people talking about with regards to the Vourukasha's Glow is Nilou. Nilou could take advantage of the set given certain circumstances. Again, Nilou would have to be the one on field, and she would be receiving damage presumably from her bountiful cores in order to get the stacks of the 4-piece bonus. Now, this is doable if you do play Nilou in her on-field stance. It's very doable. She'll be taking that Dendro core damage. But her Bloom teams typically use her as an off-field unit or a quick swap unit. I wouldn't really think it's worth changing her playstyle just to make this set bonus work. Another thing to consider is that since Nilou teams are basically reaction teams, those damage bonuses are less important on her. So yes, getting the damage bonuses will pull out big numbers from her burst, and if that's what you like to see, then be my guest. But outside of that, there are also, again, teams, rotations where popping her burst is very optional. And if you are trying to pop her burst regularly, then that necessitates building some amount of ER. Now, if you want to lean into the bountiful core damage, at least the 2-piece bonus, which gives extra HP, helps with that. So on Nilou, the Vourukasha's set is a nice full set option to have, but it's definitely not a must-have for Nilou. So all in all, taking the 4-piece sets, I really think that these sets are meant for future characters that just haven't been released yet. Whether they're going to be Fontaine characters or Hydro or just other HP scaling characters in general. Because when you look at our existing characters, they already have good sets available, and you may or may not have already farmed them, or these sets just simply exist in more efficient domains. Maining Childe is the only instance right now that I would consider trying for Nymph stream, but I wouldn't really recommend sinking your resin into it just yet for a 4-piece set, especially since I don't think Vourukasha's set as a full set is great on anyone right now, so I just don't think it's worth the resin or it's resin efficient enough. And if you are starting Childe's artifacts from scratch, then again, you have other more resin friendly options. Now, if we consider the 2-piece set bonuses, I do think that they are a nice addition, because until now, we've only had 1 HP bonus set and 1 Hydro damage bonus set. So now that we have these new sets available to us, Hydro units can go for a 2-piece Hydro. It's a nice option in farming that allows you to prioritize substat quality. HP desiring characters like Nilou or Zhongli can now get even more HP from a Tenacity Vourukasha combo. Or if you simply don't want to farm for an HP bonus set alongside Pale Flame anymore, then this domain is potentially more useful to you, because at least you are getting Hydro damage instead of physical damage. And depending on the characters you're building, yeah, it might be more useful to you, which is a good thing. Now, I did mention Zhongli, so real quick, I just want to bring this up. You may be wondering about other HP scaling shielders and if they would prefer a 2-piece HP option. So for example, Layla, Diona, Toma. With regards to these units, I still think that they have better artifact sets available to them. Now, why did I mention Zhongli in particular? In his case, Zhongli keeping up a 4-piece tenacity buff depends on his pillar placement and enemy movement, and this can get tricky unless you have his C1. Whereas Layla, for example, Layla has no problem keeping up the 4-piece tenacity bonus because her stars actually track opponents. So this is a positioning thing, really. So if you want to kind of remove that inconsistency when it comes to Zhongli's pillar placement, then giving him a 2-piece HP set is just one option for shield botting to him. So essentially, as more HP Hydro scaling characters come out, then the 2-piece combos from this domain will be more and more valuable, and hopefully they announce characters soon that will make this domain worth farming. So I would basically wait for them to announce such characters that would fit the bill before really sinking your resin into the domain and hoping for the best and going through the artifact farming cycle again in a new domain. Anyway, that's going to be all for my thoughts on these new artifacts. Please let me know what you think about the artifacts down in the comments, and don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you all soon. Take care.